ABC. This is so inappropriate. Clean it up. Hi everyone, my name's Dimitri and welcome back to DimitriTube. Bachelor in Paradise, episode 8. Let's talk about it. As always, if you're enjoying my reviews, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I'm a growing YouTuber and the likes and subscribes really help me out. Okay, so just two quick things before we get started on this review. So going back to the Chris, Alana, and Jessenia love triangle. So if you go to Katie Thurston's Instagram page and scroll down a few photos, there are photos of Chris, Alana, and Jessenia all hanging out together. So in my opinion, I think Chris had a relationship with both Alana and Jessenia before the show started. I think Jessenia is more mad because Chris chose Alana over her. So after everything that happened last week, I was just so over Jessenia because she accused Chris and Alana of having a relationship before the show started, but it's also clear that she had a relationship with Chris before the show started too. So Jessenia is getting mad at the same thing she's doing herself. And I know Chris and Alana left, but honestly, I would have been cool with them staying. It's just so crazy how Jessenia was taking this moral high ground, like she played by the rules and Chris and Alana didn't, when she was doing the same thing they were doing. That's all I gotta say about that. Anyways, moving on. Just one more thing before I get started. So this review is gonna pretty much be in chronological order. I'm not gonna do it based on the love triangles because this episode honestly did not have too much jumping back and forth. Also, was it weird for anyone else to not have The Bachelor on Monday night? I was legit twiddling my thumbs Monday night because I had so much extra time on my hands and I didn't know what to do with it. Like, this is the first free Monday we've had in a while. Okay, so let's dive in and get started with this review. Okay, so the episode starts off with a cocktail party, and to set off the cocktail party, Joe, Natasha, Maurissa, Demi, Deandra, and Jessenia all confront Brendan and Pieper. So one of the things I found the most interesting was that on last week's episodes, Natasha just wanted to find out the truth. But on this week's episode, Natasha was playing the victim. Natasha at the beginning of the episode says, I was completely manipulated and I was completely lied to. So I liked the fact that during last week's episodes, Natasha was not playing victim, but now that she is, I really don't like that. At the end of the day, Natasha is not a complete victim in this situation. Brendan showed her red flags and she ignored them. Natasha says the whole time they dated, she felt that something was off, and when they started dating, Brendan did not kiss her for like a week and a half. Those are definitely two red flags that she ignored. On some level, I do think Natasha wanted to try to make it work with Brendan versus taking a risk on a mystery man that may have shown up at Paradise. So during the confrontation, we do not get any new information, but there are a couple things that I do want to talk about. So during the confrontation, Brendan reiterates again that they hung out 2 to 3 times, and they also hung out a handful of times with other people in New York City. So it's clear that Brendan and Pieper had a relationship, but they just didn't put the boyfriend-girlfriend title on that relationship. And Brendan and Pieper purposely did not put a title on their relationship as to not jeopardize their chances of getting onto Paradise. Then Demi jumps in and she says, were you open to meeting other people or just waiting for Pieper? And Brendan responds, I've spent way more time with her in the past 30 days than I ever could back home. And y'all, I hate to say it, but Brendan has a point. Paradise is one of the best places to build a relationship. When you're in Paradise, you don't have to work, you don't have errands or obligations, you don't have family or friends distracting you, you don't have social media distract you. Literally, your sole focus is on your relationship. And on top of that, Brendan lives in Massachusetts and Pieper lives in Oregon. They live across the country from one another. So this is one of the perfect times for them to work on their relationship and build their relationship and spend a ton of time together. I am by no means team Brendan. I do think what he did was wrong, but he does make a good point here. And then after that, Joe chimes in and says, there's no rule book in Paradise. And I'm just like, Joe, you're not helping. If there was no rule book in Paradise, why are you even starting this confrontation in the first place? So Brendan and Pieper remove themselves from the situation, and then when Brendan is talking one-on-one with Pieper, Brendan drags all the women and says they're trying to intimidate him out of Paradise. And Pieper agrees. And again, Brendan is not wrong. They are all trying to intimidate him out of Paradise. And this whole situation is just kind of weird because Bachelor in Paradise is now turning into Survivor, and they're basically trying to boot him and Pieper off the island. So when Brendan and Pieper are chatting, Brendan says they're all annoying and Pieper agrees with him. And I'm just like, if you find everyone and everything annoying, why are y'all staying in Paradise? So I do understand that the clout is on the line here, but me personally, if I'm annoyed with everyone in Paradise and everyone in Paradise cannot stand me, I personally am not going to stay there. So then after that, Pieper says, obviously we all care about followers in this franchise. I'm excited for the future possibility of making more money, but I would have got there on my own. I have an entire master's degree in marketing. I think I can figure out how to get a few more followers. And then Pieper says, if the Chris and Alana situation never happened, they would have never gotten into this place. And she also says, I told you I didn't want to come. First of all, Pieper, if you have a master's degree and you don't need this, then show the people you don't need this and just leave Paradise. And second thing, when Pieper told Brendan, I told you I didn't want to come, it almost came across like Brendan was the mastermind in all this, but I don't think that's true. I think it was both Brendan and Pieper's idea to execute this plan equally. So let's unpack this, y'all. Nobody is entitled to a good edit on this show. Everyone is at the mercy of the editors and to production. Whenever you go on this show, you risk getting a bad edit, and it doesn't matter how you were portrayed previously on the show. And I'll give you examples. First two examples, Katie Thurston and Rachel Lindsay. On their respective seasons of The Bachelor, they received amazing edits and later on became bachelorettes. And part of the reason was because of those amazing edits. And not so much Katie, but Rachel Lindsay is constantly dragging Bachelor production because of the edit she got for her season of The Bachelorette. And it is not production's job to give you a good edit. Their job is to tell a good story. So oftentimes it's even better just to leave the franchise and never come back after you get a good edit. One of the most prime examples I can give for this is Tyler C. Tyler C received an amazing edit and he barely did anything on Hannah B's season of The Bachelorette. And Tyler C just left the franchise on a good note, and I highly doubt he will ever come back because why risk this amazing reputation that you've already built? So going back to my point with Brendan and Pieper, Brendan on Tayshia's season got an amazing edit, and then Pieper on Matt James's season got a villain edit. So Brendan has a way better outlook on the show and what you can get out of the show, and he helped convince Pieper to come on. But when Pieper told Brendan she didn't want to come, I think it was more so because of how she was portrayed the first time. But the opportunity to get more followers, more clout, and possibly a redemption edit is what ultimately made Pieper decide to take another chance on the show. And on top of that, having a plan with Brendan this time, she thought she would be okay. But now that she knows that her and Brendan have been caught, she's trying to save herself and say, oh, I got a master's degree, I don't need this. Well, Pieper, if you didn't need this, you would not have agreed with Brendan to come on the show in the first place. So then after that, Brendan and Pieper ultimately leave Paradise. And when they were leaving, I was hoping they just took Abigail and Noah with them too, because they're not bringing a storyline anyway, so they can go too. Next, we have a one-on-one with Maurissa and Riley. And for their one-on-one, they play a game where the person picks a card. Whatever body part is on that card, that person licks whipped cream off that body part. ABC, this is so inappropriate. Clean it up. And this is legit the first time I have almost thrown up from watching this show. When Maurissa licked the whipped cream off Riley's toe, that was absolutely disgusting. First of all, I hate feet and I hate whipped cream, and I could not do it. Ugh. Okay, so it's Tammy's birthday and everyone does a cheers for Tammy's birthday, and then after that she pulls Thomas for a one-on-one. So Tammy tells Thomas that she's not gonna ask about the date and whatever happened, happened, and then she reiterates that she likes him and she's here for him. So Thomas responds that things went well and he had feelings for someone else last night. And then Tammy says, I don't understand, I'm willing to put up a fight. What do you see in the connections elsewhere that we lack in? Now, I don't think Thomas should have answered this question because you should not compare relationships immediately after a breakup. And Thomas says things just feel more stable elsewhere. So then after that, Tammy says she's willing to fight, and she basically starts begging and telling Thomas that she took a risk with him. She also says, I trusted you with everything. And when Tammy said that, I was like, well, karma's a because Aaron trusted you and you made out with Thomas right in front of his face. After that, Tammy starts to spiral, and it is absolutely hilarious because we as an audience all know that she brought this on herself. And what's that famous saying? How you got 'em is how you'll lose 'em. Well, we're seeing that saying play out in real time. Now, I will say, I think Thomas handled this very well. He could have handled it better. but I do think he handled it well. When Tammy asked him what his connection lacked, I don't think Thomas should have answered that question. And when Thomas hugged her and said, "You're not a fool, you did nothing wrong, you're amazing, you're sweet, etc., etc., I don't think he needed to do all that. Because honestly, that's the last thing someone wants to hear after they've just been broken up with. Especially from the person who broke up with them. Later on in the episode, Tammy does get eliminated during the rose ceremony, and I was pretty sad about that. Y'all, at the end of the day, Tammy delivered, and we have no choice but to stand. She was one of the most interesting people in Paradise, and I'm kind of sad she's gone. But I know she'll be okay, because she'll still be able to get a man outside of this. Next, we're moving on to the rose ceremony, and there's a few things I want to talk about here. So first up, Natasha gets a sympathy rose. Wells basically pulls out another rose and tells Natasha that she deserves another chance at love and gives her the rose so she can stay another week. So it's basically a sympathy rose. So I had mixed feelings about this. To be honest, I was ready for Natasha to just get sent home. Honestly, I feel like her storyline has just run its course. Also, by ABC giving Natasha a rose, isn't that very much saying that ABC is taking Natasha's side? And I know that Brendan is wrong, but this is a reality show. And according to the rules of the show, the guys give the roses. For ABC to step in and break all of the rules to give Natasha a rose seemed like a little bit of an overstep to me. What did y'all think of that? Let me know below in the comments. Also, why would Natasha even want to stay after going through all of this heartbreak? The accommodations in Paradise are shitty anyway, and on top of that, you keep getting your heart broken. Why even stay? Seems to me she's possibly chasing the clout as well. But y'all not ready to unpack that conversation. So then after that, Ivan chooses Kendall for his rose. And y'all, Ivan is a pawn. Kendall has no interest in this man. She just wants to stay on this island so she can cry longer about Joe. And lastly, Demi gets sent home. Finally, this woman has gone home. I was so happy about this because she was annoying as f. And just one last thing about this rose ceremony. The first 45 minutes of this episode was absolutely amazing, but the rest of the episode was pretty boring. I realized Brendan, Demi, Jessenia, and Tammy were literally 70% of the storyline. And now that they're all gone, I'm just like, what is Paradise gonna do for a storyline? Oh, and one more thing I almost forgot. At the end of the rose ceremony, they introduced Lil Jon. I thought Lil Jon was fine. He was fun, but he was a little corny. But I do think he did a better job than Lance and Titus. Also, Lil Jon hasn't had a hit record in like 8 years. Why didn't ABC pick more of a relevant rapper? And there are so many up and coming rappers that I'm sure had the same booking fees as Lil Jon. But ABC in general just seems to be behind the times. Next, they introduced Blake into Paradise, and I actually remember this guy from Claire's season. So he got eliminated early on Claire's season, and I don't think he had any lines, but I do remember him because Blake Moynes was also on his season, and they referred to both of them with their full last names because they were both Blake M's. So Blake gets a date card and he ultimately chooses Tia for the date. And y'all, my baby James is finally getting a storyline. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm getting emotional because this show has been such a wild ride for my baby James, and he just can't keep a girlfriend for some reason. So my guess is that James must be really boring, or he must have a really shitty personality, because James has had like 3 girlfriends in Paradise now, and none of them have given him a chance. Also, we have seen basically 0 camera time of him trying to actually build a relationship, so he must be really dry. And I don't know if y'all watched Paradise in 2019, but the same thing happened to Kevin. I thought Kevin was absolutely gorgeous, but none of the women in Paradise were interested in him. So for the date, Blake and Tia go off-roading, and then afterwards they take a shower. I don't really understand why they took a shower. They didn't even get that dirty anyway, but ABC's probably just out of ideas. So this date just seemed a little forced to me. I thought Tia had more of a connection with Kenny, to be honest. Next, Dr.Joe enters Paradise. If it were up to me, there are like 20 other people I would have rather picked other than Joe. Second thing, aren't we in the middle of a pandemic? Shouldn't you be like saving lives? Was returning to this trashy reality show really more important than that? Also, I'm pretty sure he would make more money being a doctor than laying on a beach with no AC. But in his defense, laying on a beach with no AC is less work. And just one more thing I want to say. So Joe got a very positive reaction after being on Tayshia's season, so I'm shocked that he's still single. Joe is a 40-year-old anesthesiologist who lives in New York City. If he can't find love, is there any hope for the rest of us? So Joe ultimately picks Natasha for the date, and they go to dinner and sip on jumbo margaritas. So I don't see much of a connection. They honestly just seem like friends to me, but they also should have gotten an activity date instead of like a dinner date. Like, I think Natasha and Joe would have done better going off-roading like how Blake and Tia did. So on the date, the topic of Brendan comes up, and Brendan and Joe are friends. And Natasha is worried about bringing up Brendan because she wants to drag him, but she knows that him and Joe are friends. And Natasha ends up dragging Brendan anyway. So first thing, I was shocked that Natasha didn't just change the subject. Natasha is a pretty positive person, so it was kind of weird to me that she didn't change the subject. Second thing, it's possible that production pushed this and forced her to talk about it, so that could have been it too. Now at the end of the date, Natasha could tell that something was off after she mentioned Brendan, and Natasha doubts that they're gonna keep dating. That was fine with me because they don't have a connection anyway. Now, a lot of people on the internet were kind of dragging Joe for taking Brendan's side, but Joe has not seen what happened yet. Also, if I had a date with someone and it was our first date, and on that date, that person dragged one of my good friends that I've never had a problem with, it would be slightly a red flag for me too. And that's not a huge deal breaker for me. I would still keep an open mind, but at the same time, I would have a little bit of a guard up with that person, wondering why they're dragging my friend. And finally, we have a one-on-one with Joe and Serena P. So Joe puts rose petals on a blanket and they both chill on the beach. During their one-on-one, Joe says that he does nice things for Serena P every night, but we as an audience haven't seen any of that. And it makes me kind of sad because this season of Paradise has barely any romance, so I would have actually liked to see the nice things that Joe's been doing. During the date, Serena P tells Joe that she's falling in love with him, and Joe tells her that he's falling in love with her too. Now, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see a lifetime of love coming from this relationship. Their whole conversation sounded like they were two sixth graders talking. And while they're on the date, Kendall is watching and she starts to spiral. And just one last thing before I wrap up this review, at the end of the episode in the clips, they showed a scene of Thomas half naked and he is hot. I wasn't that into Thomas, but after seeing that, I'm definitely a little more sold on Thomas now. And that is the end of the episode and the end of this review. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.